Hi, I'm Mishael Porembski.
And I'm Pastor Ron Wean.
And you're listening to 180 Your Life, the Grief Empowerment podcast that pairs health and wellness with the grief journey. Thank you for joining us. In this next 5-part series, we're going to be talking about hope for the holidays. And I just have a story to share with you, not really a story, an experience that my amazing father, who has lived with us for the last 5 years since his stroke, he passed away in his sleep about 6 days ago. And I didn't know that if I was going to be able to do this kind of a podcast so soon after losing my dad. You know, he's really been a father figure to my children after I lost my husband over 10 years ago, and he's a best friend and a mentor. And I just feel like he would want us to keep moving forward. And there were so many incredible lessons that I've learned that over the last 6 days that were different in the ground zero of grief when my late husband died. And it has been such a peaceful, dare I even say energetic, healthy time that I just called Ron yesterday and went, oh my gosh, it all really works. It all really works. I cannot tell you, when I lost my husband all those years ago, I didn't know how to manage this. And now when you have some healthy strategies in place, there is an empowerment. It doesn't make the pain go away, but you can manage it in a more powerful way. So I thought, now's the time to talk about it. Let's use the pain for a purpose and help others with the lessons, the fresh lessons that we've been able to apply in a different situation. All right, and we're back. So, we're going to cover 5 different topics in these 5 days, which is empowering your ground zero, healthy choices after loss, so setting healthy boundaries, honest grief, compassion, and transformation, empowering sacred spaces, and activating your posse. Now, we have talked about some of this in our Empowering Your Ground Zero 5-part series, but I'm working on new information. And I think the biggest thing that I did, which we'll get back to in just a second, is I really let my children lead the dance of grief.
You have to surrender some things for that to happen, though, to create that kind of safe space, to let the child lead us.
I know.
Yes.
And I have been stunned at how healthy and beautiful it is when we don't brush the children aside and say, let the grown-ups manage this, go play outside, but we actually let them into the grief process. The perspective, the peace, the wisdom that my daughters brought to the table was life-changing. And that's why I thought, I have to share this. This is incredible.
Yes, they don't have the adult filters that we have. Mm-hmm. And they can see things pretty clearly, pristine.
I know. From a really fresh perspective. So I'll tell you quickly what happened, which is that it was morning time on Tuesday. So today's Monday, 6 days ago, November 21st. And I'd had my quiet time, and then I was on Facebook. All right, I'll admit it, I was on Facebook, and I was connecting. Our local Christian radio station is 104.7 The Fish, and they'd asked some questions about, do you let your middle schooler use a smartphone? And I don't, and we're actually going to wait for that. And Taylor of Kevin and Taylor here in Atlanta, she texted, she sent me a Facebook message, would you like to call in? We'd like to talk to you about this. So I did. And I was interviewed, and I got off the phone. It was around 8:50 when I got off the phone in the morning. And I was so excited because, my dad and I are media people, so that was a surprise. And I said, oh my gosh, I want to share it with my dad. So I put the Fish app on my phone. It was playing the radio music, and I went downstairs because I knew they were going to have us on in about 10 minutes. So I knock on the door, and my dad doesn't answer. I knock again, and, I said, "Good morning, Daddy." And he didn't answer. And then I thought, well, maybe he's in the bathroom. And then I opened the door, and I could tell immediately that my dad had passed in his sleep. And very, very peacefully. His face was very peaceful, but I could tell. And I wanted to make sure that maybe he was just not sleeping. That he was sleeping, and I yelled his name, and he didn't respond, which I didn't yell his name before, but if he was quiet, I would go, "Daddy," and he would respond.
Right.
So then I closed the door, and I had a plan with my girls. If something should happen with Papa, because he was 83, almost 84, what are we going to do? And I had always said, "Girls, Papa's probably going to transition to heaven in our house, because he doesn't really leave our house, because he used a walker, he was quite frail." And I said, "So what's going to happen? We'll close the door if by chance he's in his room, and get a neighbor, call the police or call 911, and if I'm not home, you go outside, get a neighbor." But thank God I was home. So I was home, and I called my girls down, and I immediately said, "Girls, I think Papa has passed, and God is going to be stepping into a new role, a deeper role even, as Daddy in all our lives." So I reset perspective that God was there for us. He was going to be a father to the fatherless. And I can't even believe that, I'm almost 50, and I'm a daddy's girl. And I, but it was true. I learned from my widowed friend, Lori Apon. She set that perspective right away. You have a new father with her children when her husband passed, and he is God, and he will take care of us. So that is the first thing I said. I went to my neighbors, and they came back with us. We prayed, they checked on my father. My neighbor said, "Yes, I think he really has passed." We prayed together. We called 911, and then everything starts to roll. And there are a few things, little tidbits that you don't know until you're in the situation. Like, you need to know when you have a will, and it's called, and there's another piece of paper called a DNR, do not resuscitate, which my father did not want to be resuscitated. Yes. And so the police will ask you, or the EMTs when they arrive, "Do you have a DNR?" And I said, "He does somewhere." I did not know where that was. So they said, "He has passed relative, his blood hasn't pooled, so that means he's passed in the last couple hours. So we have to proceed with resuscitating." So they did. And it's full-blown resuscitation. So without having to go into many details, I didn't want to go into the room. I didn't want to see my dad under all of that. But so you need to know in advance, where are the DNRs? And when you fill out a DNR, do not resuscitate, along with your will, you register it with your local hospital. So they had the DNR at the local hospital. But we're in the midst of all of this. We're scrambling for the DNR. That's not really what you really want to do.
Right.
And I'd said to them, of course, if my father can survive, of course I want him to, but I don't want him to live like in a vegetative state, But you just let what happen is going to happen. So that's a little something to know. A little something else to know is in that period between when you call the ambulance and you have that moment in the house, if you want to touch their hand, that's the time to do it. Because once the EMTs arrive and the police arrive, unfortunately in our world today, it is a potential crime scene. So you cannot go in the room, you cannot touch the body, you cannot do anything of that like that until the medical examiner at the hospital says you can. So that's something to know, right? So we go to the hospital, and they lead us to to a quiet room, and so So they lead us to a quiet room to tell us, I knew from listening to other widows, when you're going to the quiet family room, it's very, very serious, and possibly somebody's going to tell you that they've passed. So we get into the quiet room. This is going to be, I just want to let you know, this is not going to be a 15-minute podcast. We're probably going to go to 20 minutes. So we go into the quiet room, and we're waiting. They said the doctor will come and see you. And my girls were sitting next to me. We had our neighbors, a husband and wife team, sitting with us. And I put my arms around my girls, and I said, girls, if we're in this room, I have a pretty strong feeling that Papa has passed for sure. And I just want to tell you myself, and God's going to be with us, and it's going to be all right. Well, there were 2 quiet rooms, one next to the other. And apparently somebody found out next door to us about an unexpected passing. You know, there was an accident I had heard later on, and at the moment I'm telling my girls, a man threw himself against the wall. There was screaming next door. No, no, no. A woman was out in the hallway, jumping in circles, screaming no. And I looked, we were surprised by this, and I understand. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying, for our experience with my girls, I had to set a healthy boundary. And so I saw Sophia, my little 10-year-old, in the corner, and she was on the floor, cuddled in the corner, because this was scary. And it was almost like, if you understand how, it was like the enemy of our souls trying to infuse in that moment terror into my family. And I stood up, and I snapped, and I said, we're out right now. Girls, get up, everybody out, we're out. And there was a policeman outside. He goes, ma'am, where are you going? The doctor's coming. I go, I got to tell you where I'm not going, and it's not here, because we will not do this with terror. So I got up and I walked out with my family, and the police is with us, and he goes, ma'am, the doctor needs to be able to find you. I said, then lead me to a place that's peaceful, because that's what we're going to do. I will curate this grief experience for my daughters. And so I had the presence of mind, and I remember I could hear my dad in the back of my mind, and he would tell this story about when he was in El Salvador as a cameraman. He was a network news cameraman, and it was during the wars of El Salvador, and the bullets were flying in the street, and they'd killed his driver, and he and his sound man were hiding in the bushes in the street, trying for a house to let them in, knocking on the doors. And my dad has always told me again and again, when the bullets are flying, keep your wits about you. Do not panic. Tell a joke if you must, but do not panic. And I could hear my dad in the back of my head saying, when the bullets are flying, do not panic. And so that's how I kept my mind going, all right, we're going to have a peaceful experience. We're going to do this in faith. I had my neighbors with me, so I had support with me, and that's how we forged forward. And eventually I went to a different room. I talked to the doctor by myself. The neighbors had my children in the waiting area. I ensured that they were not surrounded with fear. And then afterwards, when we left, because it was confirmed that my dad had passed, this most compassionate doctor came and confirmed to me. And she was really on the verge of tears. She was so sweet. And I comforted her, and I said, it'll be okay. It'll be okay.
Talk about role reversal.
How wonderful to have a doctor who had so much compassion. Mm-hmm. That was endearing. Just people around me in the hospital, at Kennestone Hospital, were so kind and compassionate and understanding. And then afterwards, we're leaving, because now the medical examiner has my father's body, and there's a whole process with that. So now it's time for us to go home. And my neighbors ask, what do you want to do now? Well, there's lots of phone calls. On the way to the hospital, I was making phone calls, first to my brother, then to heads of different parts of our families. Mm-hmm. And then I would tell them, you need to talk to everybody else. So key things that I did. One, I made sure that, and it can happen with grief, you're on the phone, you're on the phone, you're on the phone, you're on the phone. You're on Facebook, you're on. I put my phone down. when I called the key people in my family and I said, please tell the rest of your people, because I cannot be on my phone. I could see my girls just sort of huddling together, and I needed to be in the middle of that. And
so you set a boundary.
I set a boundary, and eventually later on in the day, I said that my father had passed, and I said, I'm sorry if you find out this way. I'm only one person. I can't be on the phone all the time. I've got to be with my girls. And that was one of the best choices I made. Another really great choice was going to get healthy food. I wouldn't touch sugar, no alcohol, no sugar. Let it be healthy food that fed. I needed to be on my A game. Feed my mind, feed my daughters. And then, so I said, Whole Foods is the closest place. And so I was like, we need to go to Whole Foods before we go to my house and stock up on some good food. And then I asked my children, what do you want? And you know what they wanted?
No, what they want.
They wanted to go to Home Depot and to get lights for our Christmas tree. And so I said, we're going to Whole Foods and then we're going to Home Depot. Because I knew once the grief ball got rolling, nobody's going to want to go get lights for the Christmas tree. And so we're going to talk about healthy choices and loss in our next podcast. But we did. I cried and shopped in Whole Foods, and then I cried and shopped in Home Depot. But I got the things that my children needed so that they could feel safe and secure. And when my children felt safe and secure, it created an environment of peace in my home. And that was the most empowering thing that we could do. So next podcast, we're going to talk about healthy choices after loss.
Great.
Okay. So God bless. Thank you for joining us. Learn more at 180yourlife.com. God bless. Oh, and 180yourgrief.org.